Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming back to the sixth audio cast in the audio series known as the Q News Patriot. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SGAnon. Glad to have you back. It's been a very eventful week. Um, you all will notice with these audio casts, if I don't have something useful to say, I tend to just let it go until I do have something new and useful to say. We could sit here and analyze things every day from now, probably for the next few years, with just the sheer amount of intelligence that's been dropped in the Q operation since the Q operation began in late 2017. Um, Suffice to say, most of you, I think, out there are perfectly capable researchers. I think you are. If you're listening to this audio cast, you would be. I would contend in the top 25% of those that are awake and searching for the truth, those that are willing to expand their belief systems and their consciousness to allow for realities that do in fact exist, but maybe not in the ways that you thought, or maybe they exist in opposition to what you used to believe was possible. We had a Trump rally recently in Pennsylvania. I'm sure many of you watched that and saw that. This week is going to be a tremendous week. August was extremely hot. September is going to be extremely reflective. I've seen the word deep used several times in the truther community. That is a great adjective for it. It's also a calm, and I'll leave it at that. This month is going to has started off kind of with a bang. 45 at his most recent rally comes right out and plays a song towards the end of the speech at the end of the rally. The song, the name of the song was I Am Q. And then also towards the end of the rally had a song playing in the background that, if you Shazam it, comes up WWG1, WGA, where we go one, we go all. It doesn't get more obvious than that, folks. It truly does not. Donald Trump is telling us that the Q operation is not only real, it's extraordinarily legitimate, and it is progressing at the appropriate pace according to the plan. Now, there have been hiccups along the way. We've had to redefine some things, replan for some contingencies that didn't exist prior, in prior circumstances. Remember, as we go through this journey and we live through this worldwide military operation to right the wrongs that have been thrust upon mankind, I've said before, everything is event and awareness driven. There is no such thing as a timeline in the sense that you believe there is. As a matter of fact, both parts of it, time and line, are deceptive. This sort of operation does not exist in linear time. It is moment to moment, second to second, in some places, hour to hour, day to day. And we are moving into a very hot part of this operation. The public will soon be gripped in terror as China launches its cleansing of Taiwan. Some of the mainstream news will continue to fearmonger as we deliberately, tactfully, purposefully clean house within the mainstream networks. We have already seen that process beginning. I encourage each of you to acquaint yourselves in your research with friends of Donald Trump's who are involved in media or entertainment. Pay special attention to the ones that show up in the press about the president and his friendship, particularly the ones that disparage that relationship. It's a good rule of thumb, at least for the moment and probably for the next few weeks, as we move through the cleansing process and we start establishing true pundits and true journalists in these levels that have been previously captured for decades. It's important to remember that generally, if they're saying something is wrong, it's probably correct. And if they're saying something is bad, it's probably all right. Um, that does not mean that you should blindly categorize things just based on, the cover of a book. That the golden rule always applies: never judge a book by its cover. Never assume something simply based on a few lines that you've read, either at the top of the page on your phone or in the title of the article and you're searching. Examine these things. You don't have to read them and analyze them like a literature analysis, but you do need to acquaint yourself with the general feel of what was said, the general content, and any offhand the references that just don't make sense in the article. Lots of coded messages are sent out by the mainstream news to their deep state allies. It is an outlet that the Anons watch very closely, not for accuracy of information, but simply it's like monitoring the codes from the enemy. What are they saying to each other? What could we reasonably expect? In his speech, we're going to switch gears here. In his speech in Pennsylvania, President Donald Trump came as close as he has ever come to announcing that he is the president of the United States and the commander in chief. President Trump, in that speech, made the comment, just last week, I was at the White House and Weirdo, referring to Mark Zuckerberg, visited me, begging me about something else, whatever Trump said. Trump does not misspeak. Trump is an experienced orator. He is an experienced speech giver. He has overseen essentially the public relations arm of this entire military operation since he walked down the escalator in 2015 and then got on the campaign trail in 2016. President Trump calculates his words very carefully. President Trump understands that the fake news, enemy of the people media, along with millions and millions, and at this point, hundreds of millions of American citizens, are hanging on every word that he says. For one reason or another, everyone has the information that they want to derive from the words he says, but also from what he does not say or what he hints at. Seeming to misspeak about being in the White House last week was not a misspeak whatsoever. The Supreme Court of the United States overturned the election, the 2020 general election, and government agencies that are connected to that election, and especially in writing that election, have been sworn to non-disclosure agreements until such a time that the news can be disseminated. There are many factions of this operation that are going on all at once. It is worth noting that when we right the boat of the United States presidential election in 2020, there is no going back. Anything that we need to carry out covertly right now for the success of the mission and the mission critical objectives must happen prior to Donald Trump's return as president of the United States. Once Donald Trump returns in the public eye, the deep state house cleaning will begin. The public discourse will shift dramatically, and we will be put in a position where if there are any cockroaches left, we will not be able to catch them because they will be. It's easy to catch someone in a crowd of people when they're the only person running. It's much more difficult to catch someone in a crowd of people when they are one of thousands that are running. That is the situation we have. The silence allows us to put a lens on the individuals that we need to put the lens on, track them, track their networks, log everything that they do, which the NSA has been doing now for many years. But mission, battlefield intelligence and reconnaissance is a 24 hours a day developing dynamic thing. And so we continue to log and monitor those we need. The pedophile known as John Podesta was apprehended by U.S. military special forces. As I understand it, it was a joint operation. I do not know when that apprehension happened, except to say that it must have happened over the last 6 to 7 weeks. Mr. Podesta is referenced by Q as the arrest that will kick off quite a few events in the streets, quite a few events in the public eye. We do not fully have, I do not fully have the picture right now about how that's going to work. I do know that Mr. Podesta is currently playing the role that he has been told to play um, as Biden's Secretary for Clean Energy. Mr. Podesta Mr. Podesta is extremely deep and extremely high ranking in the cabal. Once we have him publicly, all of the other dominoes will come down almost at the same time. That's why he is going to be the beginning of the end in the public eye. Those are my words, not Q's. The fact that he is being brought back into the public lens, it tells us that we are gearing up. We are currently setting the stage. We're currently setting the stage for what's going to be a very dramatic next few weeks and months. Just today, or excuse me, just yesterday, there was an article put out by one of the mainstream news outlets referring to the Hillary Clinton campaign and, excuse me, John Harwood's departure from the Communist News Network. And in that article, it explicitly references Mr. Podesta and references him under the guise of media corruption. We're painting a picture. We are showing people in the most vivid way possible on every avenue of society and their personal media intake that is possible, that what they believe to be true in many cases is not. Individuals that do not have the type of influence that the media does, individuals that do not draw their influence from the media are going to be a bit unaffected by those small instances. But there are lots of individuals who draw all of their information, as far as the information that they believe and incorporate into their opinion structures, primarily from the news or various media and entertainment outlets. The mainstream media takedown has happened and is in full swing. The cleansing of the news networks, all of them, commensurate with the terms laid out in EO 13848. That has been happening now for a number of weeks. We are seeing changes at the top of the power structure in the media. CNN, for example, has a new chairman and CEO who has been on the scene now for several months. He came in after Jeff Zucker. John C. Malone, I mentioned him earlier. You all will want to look him up. We are setting the board for these last moves, but there's still more that we have to do before we can bring 45 back into the office, at least in the public eye. Let's come back to Taiwan. In Trump's speech on Saturday, Trump directly called out Taiwan and Xi. He called out the situation in Taiwan in the context of the Ukrainian war that is going on right now with Putin and Russia. Xi will cleanse Taiwan of human traffickers and biolaboratories. Xi will destroy any dumbs that are left over. The Patriots in the Chinese armed forces are very much like the Patriots in the armed forces of the United States and those around the world who simply wish to see the correct levers of power being influenced and executed and leveraged. They want to be rid of the CCP. I remember that the CCP has for many decades now been the most, we'll say, public facing cabalist regime regime, at least several decades at this point, known for their brutality. Even going back to the 80s with the Tiananmen Square and things like that. And the Chinese Armed Forces has known for a long time that the CCP is bent on world domination. Their goal is to essentially make China the superior superpower in the world in partnership with the central bankers and the elite power structure at the very, very, very top. The CCP most recently, not recently, but as of about a year and a half ago, was offered a $150 trillion loan from the central bankers, Rothschilds and Soros and those likes, simply because we have been choking off the deep state apparatus for many years now. And they were getting desperate, and they offered to loan the money to China. And China, the Chinese elders, the dragon families, intercepted the communications and shut the whole thing down. This is a war of attrition in some respects. In certain areas, we have to drain the coffers, just as you would not march on a fortress that was fully stocked, fully manned, and well rested and equipped. We cannot do that with some of the structures and some of the matrix. The word escapes me, but I think it's like allowances, the allocations. We have to work around some of the allocations that have been made by the deep state. It's a siege operation in many respects. It's an operation of readiness day to day. With Donald Trump's speech on Saturday in Pennsylvania, you were able to witness the rightful president of the United States giving the okay to a joint military alliance operation. It was a very clear signal to President Xi. It was a very clear signal to the Patriots, the Q Patriots, and the Chinese Armed Forces. And those operations have now been ongoing in the background since that day, since that evening. Excuse me. As we go through these next few weeks, you're going to witness global norms be upended. The shipping lanes, for example, that are all connected to Taiwan will be stopped. As a result of that, you're going to see things get a little bit tougher for all of the areas that are dependent upon Chinese and Taiwanese shipping, and just in general, Southeast Asian shipping in general. Remember, a great many shipping companies and ports are staffed at all levels with mercenaries and pedophiles, individuals who we would identify as enemy combatants. And so as we go through this operation in our effort to ensure that no stone is untouched or unturned, we have to bear the grit, if you will, even a little bit more. I know that each of you out there has been asked to shoulder quite the burden and make leaps of faith that you never thought possible. This entire operation, all of that has been necessary. Almost all of that has been by design. The complexity and scale of what we are currently carrying out cannot be overstated. It cannot. Q says the enormity of what is coming will shock the world. In order for the world to be shocked, we have to go through a period of time where we root out and dismantle that enormity so that we can expose it. In so doing, we're going to make things just a little tougher before they get better. Now we're moving into the fall. Things are going to get better. We have an an estimated timeline of events that we would like to happen. I hate that word timeline, but we do have an estimated time frame that we're wanting to work within. But at the end of the day, depending on intelligence and reconnaissance and the success or not success of certain operations, different gears have to flow at the correct time. Taiwan is imminent. Taiwan, I would expect to be in the news in a very big way inside of the next 10 to 14 days. We're going to switch gears here since we're coming up on a very big day here in the United States of America, 9/11. We're going to talk a little bit about that. When closing the other thought off, when Taiwan makes the news, just trust your president, trust your plan, trust the Anons, and trust yourself, trust your instincts and your research, trust your soul. Everything's going to be okay. We are working our way towards greatness, but we have to go through some more muck first. We're going to get a little bit of expose on that muck over the next week or so. While I cannot confirm that we will have a public disclosure of the truth of 9/11 over the next 6 to 8 days, I can confirm that this particular week is going to be 9/11 focused. And there will be some amount of disclosure in the public space. For those of you that are not familiar or that maybe don't, or maybe aren't, they're wanting to catch up to the ball on this one. 9/11, the layman's explanation is that it was a gigantic inside job by the United States government. Corrupt FBI and corrupt FBI and FEMA officials, along with CIA demolitions teams, infiltrated Towers 1 and 2 in the 48 hours leading up to 9/11. 9/11/2001 was the day that Alan Greenspan from CNN News Network was scheduled to go live from Wall Street at 10 o'clock in the morning to announce the law known as the National Economic Security and Reformation Act. The National Economic Security and Reformation Act was passed by the United States Congress. It was passed with minimum voting from patriots on both sides in the middle of the night. It was signed by President Bill Clinton at gunpoint by U.S. military special forces. NESARA returns power back to the people. It reverts the currency system to a precious metals backed standard, which eliminates the ability to manipulate or inflate the artificial currency. It does away with most unconstitutional taxes right off of the gate, income tax being one of them, property tax being another. It establishes a national sales tax, and it directs the United States Treasury to take measures necessary to secure the law's implementation for future generations. The gold and silver and platinum that was going to be used to fund NESARA, essentially, and had been aggregated by Q Patriots in the United States military and militaries and governments around the world since the late 60s, amounted to almost $17 trillion. That stockpile was being stored in Tower 7, one that does not often make the news and certainly has not made the public discourse in the last 20 years. While all eyes were on Towers 1 and 2 at 9 o'clock that morning, Tower 7 was being closed up after having been looted on 9/10, essentially all night. The gold was taken by the corrupt George W. Bush British Crown administration. It was reallocated to various cabal hideouts around the world. And as we all know what happened on 9/11, to kind of put the cherry on the crime that day, the Pentagon was not struck with a plane. The Pentagon was struck with a missile. And that missile was shot directly into the Office of Naval Intelligence. And so we have been fighting this battle to take back rightful control of our country on some levels, certainly at the very deep levels of the military intelligence community for a long time. We are going to have some amount of disclosure about these truths as we come through this week, even if that disclosure is not a full public recounting of how things actually happened. Remember that tens of thousands of American families, soldiers, and hundreds of thousands of individuals by proxy have been affected by the crime that happened on 9/11/01. To immediately come out without preparing the ground with some heavy seeding would be counterproductive. The narrative would not be believable, despite it being the truth. 9/11/2022 will be a day to remember. This week will be a week to remember. Just earlier today, President Donald Trump on his TruthSocial account posted two truths back to back, 11 seconds apart from one another. We take a lot of our timestamps in this movement, a lot of our comms via timestamps from POTUS 45, his social media director, Dan Scavino, Devin Nunes, Kash Patel, other names like that. Donald Trump's truth today that was sent 2 times, 11 seconds apart, was at the 1440 timestamp. 1440 is 2:40 in the afternoon, military time. The truth said, now that the FBI and DOJ have been caught in a massive and determinative election rigging scam, are they going to change the results of the 2020 presidential election? And then he goes on to say they should. That is an extremely powerful statement. We all know the answer to that question. But what Trump is doing is preparing the narrative for a shift in power at the presidential level. We all know that Trump's return is coming. We all know that Trump won the presidential election of 2020. The military knows it too. The military is not going to simply allow a Manchurian candidate to occupy office for any longer than he absolutely must. And remember, too, when we talked about this in the very beginning, we understand that this entire operation, this whole Joe Biden presidency, is nothing more than an orchestrated show. The Kabbalist players are not in charge, but we have to have the Judas goat at the very top so that we can draw all of the rest of the roaches into the light. That's what we're doing. Coming back to Trump's post at 1440 military time, if we reference Q post 1440, it's extremely interesting. It says boom, 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 boom. 4 booms. A week to remember. Dark to light. Blackout necessary. Now, what's extremely interesting with that blackout necessary commentary is that the state of California is already preparing the fields of the narrative, the public discourse, to accept a blackout. Residents are already being advised to curtail power usage down to the bare minimums. The California electrical grid, as we've known for a long time, is completely inadequate and insufficient, and could very well go black just from a stance of just from a point of view of it not being able to handle the power currently being demanded of it, especially in this day. But the other thing that is beyond fascinating with Q post 1440 is if we invert the post, what you see is a handgun. The way that Q posted the words in that post, the formatting of the post itself, if you invert that post, it is a perfect handgun, complete with an iron sight. We talked recently about the 503rd Military Police Battalion as being referenced in Q Post 3716 and 3717. Now we have President Trump pointing very clearly to a Q post that does not mix words. Four Booms calls it a week to remember, tells us that a blackout will be necessary. And then if we invert that post, it's a firearm, a sidearm, a military sidearm at that. It looks very much like a Beretta. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching the most complex real life movie that has ever been assembled and executed in world history. We are watching the military in silence go around and essentially right the entire world. The war on the 5G networks and the disabling of 5G, for example, has been going on since Donald Trump. I mean, essentially since Donald Trump won the presidency, since he was president-elect. We are in the transition period, and we're in the end stages of the transition period. I know I've said that many times, but it just can't be overstated. You've made it this far, and quite frankly, I'm proud of all of you. This is not an easy task that any of us have been asked to do. At the end of the day, I think we all need to realize that our job is to trust the plan, but not blindly. And in doing our research, find ourselves passionately believing in the plan, and then using that passion and confidence to assuage the fears of others. We discussed before that when 45 is asked to publicly turn himself in, you're going to have a very large swath of the Patriot population that simply will not know how to handle themselves. There are a great many millions of people in this country that know Donald Trump won that election, but are too asleep to break away fully from the control matrix that the mainstream media has established. Now, the mainstream media went into overdrive to cover up the Biden fraud. They had to. It was so egregiously obvious that, and without pounding the lie daily and daily and daily on every outlet and angle that was possible, the operation simply would not have succeeded. They did exactly what we wanted them to do. They implicated themselves and buried themselves in the highest level treason event that has occurred in modern United States history. Many of you might have noticed how today Google's search engine displayed results differently and certainly loaded differently. That is because the tech giants and the media giants, Silicon Valley, etc., their leadership has all been charged with crimes against humanity, complicity in treason and sedition. And now some of them are playing roles. Some of them didn't want to play roles, and they're no longer with us. In some cases, we have some that simply took themselves out, and we had to find doubles and actors to continue the movie for as long as we need it. The covert operations, or excuse me, the covert phase of this massive operation it still needs to progress a little bit further. We can't have Donald Trump back in the office of the presidency when China takes over Taiwan. We can't have Donald Trump in the office of the presidency when Putin marches the Russian army through Kiev. The optics are needed at this time to accomplish the things we have to accomplish. And remember, the goal at the end of this operation is the total freedom of mankind, the total freedom of humanity, the control of our money and power, the proper control of our governments being given back to us, and the playing field being wiped clean and leveled again so that we can improve our wonderful earth. However we accomplish that goal, so long as we get every last bit of scum, personally to this and on, that's okay. I think in many respects, the means do justify the ends, so long as we are not stooping to the sort of depravity that our enemies have used to maintain power and control for hundreds and thousands of years in some cases. So keep the faith. This week will be a week to remember. We are headed We are headed rapidly towards the train station, so to speak, our arrival destination, our point of vindication. We are moving there with great speed. I know that it doesn't seem like it. I know that sometimes things are very quiet. Do not mistake silence for inaction. As a matter of fact, if you were going to mistake silence for anything, you should mistake silence for um, rapid forward progress. The less fingers that are in the pie, the better we can do um, in ensuring that everything is seen to properly and that everybody's pieces are divvied out and carried out and accomplished accordingly. This is a coordinative compromise in a military sense that the likes of which has never happened before and is unlikely to ever occur again. And we have great patriots at every level in all countries, all around the world, who are ready to serve as the digital army and who are already serving in some cases um, as the arm of operation to carry out these missions. Keep the faith, stay strong. We are on our way there. Be on the lookout for Boom Week, especially in the United States. Be on the lookout for Taiwan. China's takeover of Taiwan is extremely imminent. Those operations actually are already in progress. There is coordination with the United States Navy. You may see news articles that reference the United States Navy in the Pacific against China's armed forces or something along those lines. Just understand that a desperate animal is attempting to cover its tail all the way to the last, but we're going to get them too. Thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate all of you. I love each of you. I love this movement. We win. In fact, at some level, we have already won. We are just going through the growth pains and the hard part to publicly expose just how big we have won and just how close we came. And with that, this is SGAnon. I'll see you next time. I guess I won't see you. I'll talk to you next time. I hope you have a wonderful week. Eyes open. Bye-bye.